um, for the essay. So this is the thing. So here are the things I'm going to talk about, right? The very basically this process of figuring out what your questions need to be about. Um, so there's obviously the starting out with your two main narratives that you're dealing with. Then for each narrative, you identify two specific aspects that you're going to actually um, focus on because you can't deal with the entire subject by itself, um, or the entire narrative. So pick two aspects for one side, to pick two for the other. Then you're trying to make sure that you are going to match the aspects you've just created. You're going to connect them to a narrative persuasive element. And we'll be using ChatGPT to help us with this. And then your survey questions, meaning 10 need to be about just narratives and persuasion, but also mainly focusing on the specific elements you just figured out that you're going to talk about. Then the next 10 questions need to be about your subject, but specifically about the aspects of the subject that you're talking about. So it's a process for just narrowing down the subject so that it's doable, right? Two narratives, right? So you have your two narratives, they're both very broad. Harm education will improve education. So now you have your two aspects. So you need to think about what it is you're going to say about your specific narrative, right? So AI will harm higher education. That's big. So I need to do a couple. I want to change this, but it's okay. So two aspects. One is AI removes, this is the harm. AI removes the human element from education, and then AI increases potential for academic dishonesty. That's possible. Then narrative two is the positive. So AI will improve education experience. AI enables personalized learning experience. AI facilitates in-depth subject study. So now you've moved on and you have your two aspects. That's what you're going to be focusing on, both of these aspects of your narrative, and for these questions and also for future stuff, right? Okay, so I wonder if people can click here though. Let me copy it. Anyway, so this is the link that goes to these definitions. So, and I just simplified them so they're just talking about these elements of narrative persuasion and then how they relate to our social narratives that we're talking about. So I just got rid of the thing about how it relates to stories or fiction because we don't need that. So you want to have like this document, I mean, copy and paste it into a doc, whatever you need to do, but you want to make sure you get this to chat GPT. I guess you can copy and paste it directly in. Um, so that it has some idea about, like, it knows what definitions you are working with. If you don't do that, it'll make up its own and maybe right, maybe on target, maybe not be. Um, then you put in your aspects, like the different aspects of your narrative. And then you ask it to match and decide, okay, here's one aspect. Which of these narrative persuasive elements um, causes my aspect to be persuasive? It's like, which of these is the most central element that's making this be persuasive? So every statement you're writing is about making something persuasive, right? AI removes the human element from education. It's trying to persuade people. I need to know how it does that and what method it uses, like which of these elements it uses. So that's the theory behind that. So here's what you're telling ChatGPT, right? So first, I still believe this is to be true, that it always is better if you say what you're doing at the beginning, right? You say, I have to write 20 survey questions, and this is what 10 need to be about, and this is what the other 10 need to be about. And then it has some context for what's going on. Then you attach the definitions or copy and paste them in and just say, these are the definitions that I'm working with, and then ask it to connect them. So, which of these narrative persuasive elements is most important for each of my aspects, stuff like that. Right. So that's what you tell it, and then will give you whatever it gives you. And what I do is I ask it to just explain it. It probably will. It'll say, this is why I picked it, but I've asked it another time sometimes just to be like, can you explain why this is the most important element or whatever? Um, like, how is this so important? And that might explain more. So the point is, you need to make sure that you understand what it's talking about, right? So I'm picking transportation and reflection for these because I understand them. Now, something to think about doing, which might matter a little bit later, but it could be good now, is that you might want to use both. You want to pick two for both sides for both narratives, because later when we have to write this stuff, we have to compare these things, and when we do that, it might be easier if we have these two. But that's not a super requirement, but it's something to think about. So I would, based on what it gave me and based on like which ones it gave me for this, I decided I would use transportation and reflection for both of them. And then the next one, I'll use vicarious experience and imagery for both of them. So that might be helpful. Again, not super crucial at this point, but sort of looking down the road. In any event, you come up with something, and now you have this grid thing. So everybody wants to have this somewhere like accessible, like a version like this. Um, just because, like I said, we're going to use it to write topic sentences and develop the essay. And just having it in a very sort of concise, clear way. Here's the main narrative, two positions and their elements, and then same thing on the side. Just having them set up that way will be very useful. So I would recommend having that. So now we're at the questions. So you have to, the first 10 have nothing to do with your subject, whatever your subject is. It's only about narrative persuasion, meaning narratives and also persuasion, but even more, it's even more about whatever elements you've just picked. So we can't, there's only 10 questions, right? So you can't possibly ask questions about every single aspect of narrative persuasion and figure out how people have responded to it over their life or whatever. And you don't really want that. You just want information about how people have been um, affected by or persuaded by the ones you care about. So this is the center of those 10 questions. And so you want to give that to ChatGPT and say, okay, I need 10 survey questions that will find out information about these narrative, persuasive narrative elements. So that's will be your focus. You don't want to end up with 10 questions just randomly about narrative persuasion. That's useless, right? So then, second part, next 10 questions. This is about your subject. And what you want to look at here is that you're going to obviously probably get some opinions, right? Like, so, I think guns should be illegal. Agree, disagree, or whatever. They'll do that one, which is fine. But then you need to really think about how you need questions that figure out or how they got to where they are, like what helped them form their position. So, and you want questions like that. So that's another thing to put in if you're having ChatGPT generate questions. Like you want to be like, okay, so I need 10 survey questions about how people feel about these subjects or these aspects, but also how they were persuaded to believe in them. Something along those lines you want to put in there because those are the questions that will be most useful to you, right? So not just the opinion and about your subject, but also how did they get to their opinion? What persuaded them? What elements or things persuaded them to believe what they believe? And then we're off to Google Forms. I just wanted to point out just a couple things. This is just to make sure. So here we are. Oh, first, you want to have all of your questions just on a document, like on a regular text document. That looks like I got stuck. Um, and then transfer them over, but the document will be useful. So if you have a Word document, right, just with the questions, and then you start a Google sheet. Now, originally I said you go ahead and use multiple choice and also the scale or whatever, I just think just do multiple choice, right? The scale sometimes it just if you do the scale and it only does the two on the ends, that's people don't know what to do with that. So the way to do it is just this, right? You have the basic answers that you would have on a scale, but they're just in multiple choice format. And basically, you fill in one of these, and then you can just copy it using this little replicate question thing, and then create 10 of those so they're all filled in with the answers, and then you go back and you put in whatever statements you're going to put in. So that's my suggestion for that. It's just to stick with um, multiple choice, put the answers there, and go through. That's the easiest part, I think, for it. All right, you have that, you did it, and then you publish it. So you go up here, you click publish. Everybody needs to make sure they do this thing about connecting to a spreadsheet. So you click on responses and it should say something about connect to new spreadsheet or something. And so you do that, right? And then it will create a sheet, a Google sheet for you. And that's where it will collect all the answers that you get. And that's how you'll need all of that to use any of this data. So that's why it matters. Also, it's worth it if you then happen to change questions or edit them or something to go back to it and then say, I forget it, it'll ask you if you want to align with a new sheet or the same sheet or whatever. You just want to make sure it's up to date and still connected. So I usually just stick with the same sheet, but it'll like reconnect itself to it. So that's something to think about if you do any like just even minor edit things. All right, then the link. This is what you want to do is instead of using the Google where you put in addresses, I just don't know about that. Go up to the paperclip icon, you click on that, it has this long link. You want to shorten the link. It just makes it easier for just in general, especially if you want to embed this, which I'll show you in a sec. But like, so you shorten it, you copy it, and now you have this link. And so you can send it out, obviously, but the other thing to do, right? And I'll do it here. I'll do another one just to make sure. I don't know if everybody knows this or what, but this is how you embed links, right? Um, and this is just on a regular Word document. You can pretty much do it anywhere. Then you select it, you double click or left or right click or whatever computers you're doing. You find hyperlink or something similar, and then you paste it into there. So then you should be able just to use this, like copy this thing and go around and put it in emails or whatever you're going to do. Which also, mm, did I shut that down? Fine. Okay, so I gotta close it. All right. So, oh man, hold on a second. I will not. Okay. I don't know why it's sucking so bad. All right. Let me just do. So a lot of people already done have their 20 questions, whatever. So this is now about fixing them or revising them. It's pretty easy compared to, I don't know, olden times, whatever. So you create it, you do all that. Here's what you need to do to revise whatever you need to revise. You need to find out what your questions are actually gathering, like what information you're getting. So this is why you need a document that has all of your questions on it so that you could give it to ChatGPT and say, okay, so what am I actually gathering here? Like what information? So the first one I did was like, can you tell me what type of information these survey questions will collect? And can you tell me how many questions are involved in obtaining each piece of information? Because what I'm looking for here is I want to make sure there are more than one question for each of the main points that it's trying to gather data about. It makes it a stronger survey if you have multiple questions use in asking in different ways about a certain the same concept or idea or whatever. So it it will do this, and so I get this is what it gave me back, right? So it gave me my narrative elements over here. If type of information collected, it put it in question, like did Vivid about AI shape people's beliefs? Which I guess that's probably I don't know. I don't like the question format. Like I was hoping it'd be a little more straightforward. So that's what I did. Now, yeah, this is the same thing. So this is for my subject, right? Where I just used that same prompt, said, okay, a number of questions. Okay, so then I wanted it to be simpler. So then I use another prompt I send in says, can you describe and explain the information I will be obtaining by using the current 20 questions? And so then it does better and does more of what I want in that it gives me the element, gives me the number of questions, like the actual number, and then how many there are. And then it just says what information I'm gathering. Like I understand this much more than I understand the question, just because I guess how it's worded. But like measures how deeply people get mentally immersed in stories. That's one thing I'm going to find out. I'm going to find out whether stories make people reflect on their beliefs, whether emotional, how deep or serious an emotional connection people have to stories, and so on. So that's is it. So what you're doing by revising is that after when you ask for this information and you get this information, a couple things. If you only have one question and it's trying to like, I don't know, find out information about something, you probably want to fix that. You want to have chat replace questions. Let's just say, can you replace questions so that there are at least, two or three for each main idea that you're trying to get at. This one's for my subject. Right. So at least you want to have two. You want to have two questions that are giving that are sort of focused on each of your main ideas. And if you don't have that, I would ask for that. Um, and then it did sort of the same thing here where it just turned it into statements for me. So that took a couple prompts, but then I got sort of what I needed to get. All right. Eventually, so the idea is you finish this survey. It's not officially due till Sunday night, but if you can finish it earlier, that's good because you can send it out, and you have sort of through Thursday of next week to get responses. And because on Friday, what I want to do is have people like collect their data, like go over, here's what we do, here's how you turn it into graphs, and then here's how you use the information. There is a section of your research paper, the long paper we're doing for this end thing, that you will write this up, basically. You'll write up the methods you use to do the survey, you'll write up the results of the survey. So eventually this information will be used in a few different ways in your essay. On Monday, I'm going to go ahead and go over the entire. I know I keep being like, this is a section of the essay, this is a section of the essay. I'm going to show you the whole thing so that you know what I'm talking about. This is just, it's like a sort of a real APA paper because it's long, but you're putting it together with different elements. So I will explain that on Monday. All I wanted this was for people to focus on getting this survey done, and out and making sure that it was going to work. It kind of needs to work to some degree for you to be able to have an essay that works. So, okay, I think that was the last slide. Yeah. All right, so the idea is, if you have questions, like you want to do a chat question or you just want to talk, you can do that. You can email me. That's, I just wanted to review again sort of what we talked about, just because we've um trying not to get go too fast to get everybody far behind. So just finish this is all you need to worry about. If you're missing the literature review or even anything from that, like the annotated, get those in. Just put something together and get those done, because it's going to get harder and harder to make up stuff or finish stuff, because all classes are going to start becoming, what you probably know, right? More demanding, that whole thing. So um, that's all I have. So you're free to ask questions. You're free to go and do this or whatever. But I would just say to people who think they're done with it, I would go over, just find out what data you're getting and make sure that it's, makes sense to you, that you'll be able to use it.